How are you today, Donna?
How are you?
Just peachy. All set?
Good.
Okay, well, why don't we get started a minute early here, it looks like. Call the meeting to order. Trudy, would you call the roll, please?
McTimmy,
Present.
Sheets,
Here.
Zibble,
Here.
Swanson.
Here. We stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And you could skip it again. Do your homework assignment, Chuck?
I did not.
Okay, well, then I guess we'll skip the mission statement for now. Let it be known that Chuck not only missed yesterday, but today as well. Do we have any public comments today?
No.
Thank you. Next item is we need to approve the minutes from yesterday's meeting. May I have a motion?
So made.
Thank you. Second? Thank you. Trudy, please call the roll.
McTimmy,
Yes.
Sheets,
Yes.
Swanson,
Yes.
Zibble.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, with that, you're up.
Okay, we'll let mics are live. Let me just test the clicker here. Perfect. All right, we'll jump in. Well, once again, it's great meeting everybody. My name is Mark Seafried. I'm the managing director of NV5's local office in Solon, Ohio. Our team has a 50-year legacy in Greater Cleveland, in the region, helping owners such as yourselves to, deliver their projects successfully. That means on budget, on schedule, meeting expectations of the team that's going to be transitioning into the new space. What excites us even more with this opportunity is just the momentum we have in the area. We just turned over successfully on time, on budget, the Geauga County office building. I'm sure you've heard of the consolidation that's underway with Geauga County, and we're working with phase 2 of that now with the courts we're excited about. Also actively involved over on 615. The Cleveland Clinic is a trusted client of ours, supporting their needs with that ground up project. Also negotiations with Riverside Schools, helping them with some next phase, some things that they have planned. So we're in this area. Our team lives in this area in Lake County, and we're very excited about that and potentially continuing that momentum with this team. Again, we are a trusted resource from all sectors, and I mentioned the Cleveland Clinic, Metro Health, Tri-C, a lot of different buildings just like yours that we've delivered successfully. So we look forward to sharing more about that with you. NV5 is a national publicly traded company. We have project managers all over the country. Our largest offices are in Denver, Boston, and Cleveland. So we do have a deep bench strength there. We also have many of the offices with technical capabilities such as AV, IT, MEP engineering. So if needed to leverage those resources, it's not everything as a subcontractor. And what differentiates us from our competitors is we have in-house a full estimating department, full scheduling department. We have those resources to support our PMs in the field in a very positive way. What you see in front of you is a handout pamphlet for reference throughout. We do have the PowerPoint, which we're going to be flipping through. Looks like everybody could see that as we go through, so I'll dive right in. Our agenda, we're going to go through a quick overview of our team, the importance of the communication plan, having that be right from day one, the owner rep project scope, and some details in that, just our experience, a review there of what we had in our quals, talk a little bit more into that and what the difference is, what differentiates us from our competition, and what our clients are telling us that are I just mentioned. So our team, I'm first there, I have 20 plus years experience in this industry, started 10 years. First half of my career was structural engineer, located right in Lake County. Actually, my first boss was Jim Gills, who many of you I'm sure know that name. He taught me everything he knew with structural engineering design. I did transition after about 10 years into project management. Many of the projects I designed never got built. And it wasn't, there's a lot of things with project execution, which really interests me. And that's been where I gravitated to in my interest. I have a lot of expertise with project team delivery and coordination. Do a lot with the Cleveland Clinic with helping support team culture on projects, teaming meetings. What we find out, and we've even researched with Case Western Reserve, it's the strength of the relationships, both of the team we have in this room and all the different stakeholders you're well aware will be part of this. The strength of those relationships directly impacts the outcome of the project, holding people accountable, making sure we have an environment for success. I'll let Derek and Brian introduce themselves, but I'll first just go around the window here. Derek is positioned for this project to be the project manager, the day-to-day on site. This is a role he's been serving for Geauga County, very responsive. He brings a very collaborative nature to make sure things are fairly processed in a very efficient way. So look forward to him sharing more about that. Brian Stewart is our project controls director, worked on many projects, transportation sector, education sector, healthcare that had very, high requirements with transparency and reporting. So we have all kinds of different ways we can kind of customize that to best fit this team. Dan Sexton, he's not with us. He is our cost estimator. He leads the nationwide practice out of Cleveland for that. Has over 30 years experience working with different CMs and supporting different firms throughout this region. He knows just about every project and the price is aligned with it. We know with the pressures with cost in our industry right now, having somebody on the owner side that knows these ins and outs and where different money is very important. Brandon Pacella is a project manager that can help support things. And we also have within our proposal, SME, material testing consultant at our disposal that I know has Laketran experience for some of the material testing that we can talk about as well. So Derek, I'll let you introduce yourself first.
Sure. Hi, my name is Derek Dabrowski. I'm a local Lake County resident, been pretty much in Lake County my entire life. I went to school at Cleveland State, graduated there in 2009 with a double E degree. And from that, I've been in project management essentially since I left school. Was in controls engineering, did a lot of projects you might see, for the US Navy and for a lot of shipyards and a lot of things even in Canada as well. Came on to NV5, got into the owner's rep role and been serving that well. Been on Geauga County, helping to get them started and complete on their building project. A lot of collaboration that had to take place, a lot of on-site conversations, a lot of phone calls, text messages, all that. But I certainly love it, and it's what I like to do, and I'd love to have the chance to be a part of the team here.
Okay, again, I'm Brian Stewart. I bring 40 plus years of experience to the table here, mostly through the years with the same company as NV5 acquired Burek, which was our legacy company in Northeast Ohio. My specialty is in project controls and scheduling and cost and coordination. My crew, the things that I enjoyed most are complicated projects. And my specialty is phase construction projects that require you to maintain using the facility during the construction phase. It's a big challenge, and there's a lot of items that happen during the course of construction you need to take into account that often get overlooked when you're moving departments from one area to the next, finishing an area, bringing them into a new area. renovating the existing space. And there's a lot of pre-planning that has to be done. And that's where I really bring my expertise to the table. Again, my emphasis on project controls, scheduling and cost and coordination. Some of the owners that I've worked with are government agencies, local school districts, nonprofit hospitals and healthcare, universities, colleges. And another component that I bring to the table, I'm very adapted to and have worked in claims disputes and resolution before. So over the years, instead of dealing with claims, I like to be proactive and be claims avoidance. And that's the one of the main things that I want to bring to the table on this project. Let's keep us out of disputes. And the way we do that is through communications and working successfully with other people.
Thank you, Brian. So next is our organization structure. Let me explain.
Yeah, so the way that we look at it from the organization structure is effectively NV5, our group here, would be essentially an extension of Laketran staff. You know, we would see ourselves as Laketran employees. We would follow all the same processes and procedures that anybody else within this building would be expected to follow. But we would also be following the ethical criteria of wanting to look out what's best for Laketran. Now, with that in mind, on this project, we would have Mark as our project exec. He would always just kind of be there in the background as a helping hand. And I would be your main point of contact, leading our team and support staff as needed. So we have Brian Stewart, Diane Sexton, Brian Vasella, SME, anybody else that we would need to pull into the project. Anything in terms of your day-to-day, your meetings, reporting, if you need a call me, text me or whatever, that is effectively what my position is. And I will keep you guys apprised as to what's going on. If that means even being here every day, being here on, off shifts, because, I need to inform the drivers as to what's going on of the plan. If we have to coordinate these various moves, that is what my role is, as well as the staff, support staff would be on that as well.
And as we transition, another item that differentiates us is just how we best fit our services to what is needed. We don't try to force an approach for you, that in terms of the utilization of our team that's needed, in terms of how much time on site versus remote, we can customize that to meet your needs exactly and your budget constraints. So communication is our first main topic here today. As you see in the upper right, NV5 is going to serve as an agent of Laketran, as an extension, as Derek mentioned. We will be doing all of that coordination with Bowen. We've been on many projects with Bowen, the general contractor, the likely candidates, that we want to make sure that are interested in that bidding event for this project. We've worked with the majority of them and know the people at them. And the various other vendors. Will we be doing all of that communication and then obviously reporting to this panel? We want to bring just, actionable information to this team and recommendations. We will have active reporting that serves as early warning to things, but for the most part, we will be all that day to day for you as an extension of the team. Effective communication, there's nothing more important than that effective communication with all of the stakeholders. As you see here, a listing of some of the different important meetings that typically occur on a project like this. Derek, you want to go through that?
Yeah, of course. So we have two different types of kickoff meetings at a minimum. We would have our kickoff meeting that we would have together, NV5, Laketran, and we would with Bowen, since they're a part of the project, and go over what the expectations are, talk about what are the next steps. Once we get a GC signed on, we would have a separate kickoff for that portion of the project. And then along with the project, we'd have our at minimum weekly progress meetings with the GC, the architect, and any of the other vendors, which we would call our OAC meeting, our owner architect contractor meeting. We would then separately have our own meeting with Laketran, just to kind of go over the high points and maybe things that really require a lot of attention. Throughout that process, we can produce either biweekly reports, monthly reports, things to aid in the transparency that we want to establish on this project. We want to make sure that we are held, that not only we hold ourselves accountable, but we want to hold the GC, the architect, and everybody else accountable, so that if a member of the public wants to question as to what we're doing, we'd be more than happy to provide that transparency and that log to be able to show what we're doing. And some of these other meetings, we would be meeting with the GC, we'd be meeting with your architect on an as needed or a minimum on a weekly basis. It's just all about having that constant communication, which is essential to having a successful project. Phone calls, emails, texts. I mean, within a short period of time, we generally establish very good relationships. So we have a rapport. We trust one another. We know that we can just text somebody one line and be able to get an answer with very quickly. And that's what we strive to do for our communication plan on every one of our projects. We've gotten great success with it. And any one of these guys can tell you that, that's the key to successful projects: communication, being able to communicate with somebody on a one-on-one basis and having that trust.
And I'd add documentation to that as an important piece. We've used a lot of the different types of documentation to make the things efficient in terms of collaboration with this team, whether it's SharePoint, whether it's some kind of Procore, whatever customized system you may have, we've integrated with many things. Is that along the lines of your question? Yeah. So obviously some owners are, Google products only, some are Microsoft only. I'm not sure where you fit, but we can customize the way we communicate and to make sure those documents are at your fingertips. Brian mentioned the dark side of the business with litigation. The best way to prevent that is to have great documentation, be able to have more information at the table than somebody that may have an issue. Will know the contract, will have all the minutes and all of the, documentation on what was agreed to in the various meetings at everybody's fingertips. We wanted to, another important item is customized project reporting. I know Brian wanted to mention a few words.
Yeah, and you're looking at some example graphics that we've generated on other projects. What's unique about what we do is we customize our reporting to specific projects. And of course, this project be no different because they're all unique. But some of the things we bring awareness and accountability to the table, and our graphics and our reporting systems, they're excellent communication tools. They bring collaboration between all the parties involved. But another key, what I think is the most key component is this: it's almost like it's real time. We're not reviewing information that's stale or old or weeks old. The information is very, very current and real time. And the other thing about the way NV5 looks at things, we're proactive. We're not reactive. We try to stay in front of the issues and in front of all the things that are going on in the project. So we're dealing things, looking down the road, so we can be addressing those items before we even get to those points in the project. We're positive. We're not a negative group. We're not a negative organization, but we bring transparency not only to the construction team, but for the owner. I know the owner, we saw your questions that you had. And I know there was a lot of questions about how are we going to communicate with the owner. That's one of the key things that I've learned over the years, and the importance of having the owner involved in the whole process. And not only the owner, but the public too, because this is a public entity.
So we're going to shift now to a scope overview of what our role would consist of. As you see here, the first 2/3 of this is pre-construction. I know you guys have been through a lengthy design. You've seen different estimates come through and different permits, and then everything. The stage is set for a bidding event. We want to, with an objective, fresh set of eyes, go through constructability review, look at different risk assessments. Again, we have expertise with master budget establishment if that's a need. Reviewing the schedule. I know there's a lot of time was spent on a phasing diagram I see in the plans. just going through that with a fresh set of eyes to make sure there isn't any revisions, how do we get great pricing and resolve, the risks with a lot of different RFIs coming and change orders. That's to get things, with a design bid build to get things, addressed now. And we'll come back to that in a moment. On the right, as we move through and get the onboarding of the construction team, we would then shift to our role of overseeing the construction phase. Those meetings we had spoke of and ensuring that we have eyes on site to make sure things are getting installed correctly the first time, to make sure the crews are here as expected, to make sure that everything is meeting in terms of quality, the level of expectation needed, and that just all of the stakeholders are accountable for their roles. We did want to talk through as a differentiator our level of pre-construction services. As mentioned, in-house, we have a lot of technical capabilities with cost and schedule, and that does differentiate our ability to deliver the pre-con services successfully.
Yeah, and so with respect to that, we would be doing a full evaluation of all the documentation that we've received so far, such as, we've already kind of done a little bit of some homework before we got here and already kind of looked at the phasing, which actually makes a lot of sense. We think Bowen did a really good job of putting together that phasing. I think that's a pretty solid approach. But further on, we would review what are the other risks associated with that phasing, as well as when it comes to actually building the building. I mean, do we have any sort of geotech issues? Do we have any sort of supply chain issues? Do we have material issues? Do we need to think about maybe substituting things because, for those supply chain issues, we just can't get it in time? Or maybe there's it's possibly going to increase in price substantially. And we want to make sure that we're cognizant of making sure we monitor cost, schedule, and quality. And so that's kind of what we're going to be doing in our constructability review, is ensuring that the documentation makes sense. We would be working with Bowen to make sure that we're not really missing anything, because the better we can get our documentation up front, the less RFIs we're going to have later, the less kind of issues. It'll just make for a better overall project. I don't know.
And so you could see on the bottom, we have a couple different breakouts, but knowing we have about 10 minutes left here before the Q&A, I'll just talk about the first one, just scratching the surface on what we would want to do with constructability. We got to dive right in, with the time's tight. We want to get things out on the street as quickly as possible. What you're looking at are real comments on your drawings. Brian, I don't know if you want to kind of talk through some high level, just initial comments.
Well, some of the initial items that we saw were, some of the issues associated with the exterior facade of the building, the vapor barrier, making sure those items are properly addressed, because those are the type of items that slow projects down once you get started in the field. And the details, the devil's in the detail, I guess you could say, as far as making sure that those are the type of items that would make this a more efficient project for the owner long-term. Some of the other items, we looked at some of the hardware schedules and the drawing labeling that we thought needed to be taken a little deeper dive and look at. Another component, and this is very typical of a renovation and addition project, is the making sure the mechanical and electrical equipment and the schedules align, not only with the, that they're going to function correctly, but do they align with how the project is going to be phased? How is it going to be, is the equipment going to be operational for each phase of the work when it's needed? Again, the exterior facade detailings usually are a problem, especially when you're using dissimilar materials on the project. I see most of this is split face block on the exterior of the building. But that's another issue. How do things interface with each other? Those details as they come together, usually those things slow work down in the field. Let's make sure that those are worked through early in the project and before you get to the construction phase. Those are some of the key items that we kind of identified. And, but there are, you know, like I said, as Derek said, you know, we've taken a brief look at the high level look at the documentation, and, you know, we getting into the details of the design is where you're really going to find these out during our constructability review.
Thanks, Brian. So we would bring these to the table, like I said, and really work with Bowen closely to make sure things are fully vetted and ready to go. Time now really helps, you know, once everybody's under contract, everything is then an RFI and a potential change order. So we want to get all that right now. Some of our relevant experience, I know in our quals pack, we go into detail with all of these. Akron Metro, BCRTA, both were Bowen design projects that we've been involved with. Tri-C, their last bond package, we were the owner rep across a large portion of those projects. Some of them were ground up, but many of them were renovation, expansion type of scopes. Very successful in that delivery, similar delivery models and familiarity with those. Cleveland Clinic, as I mentioned, Mentor Hospital, but additionally, you know, we've worked across the whole portfolio over the last 12 years with the Cleveland Clinic, you know, direct for the owner, and two of the projects, you know, Hillcrest, I'm not sure if you guys have been by there. They're, you know, they're building a cancer addition off the back of it. You know, again, an addition project is why I listed it there. Another one, Marymount, was an expansion off of the front, a new entrance by square footage, maybe the most complicated building, because the first floor was an entryway and the second floor was all brand new ORs, which you can imagine, you know, a very intensive scope. Stark Area Regional Transit Authority, and you know, I showed here the Geauga County office building. Derek, you want to speak to
Sure.
some of the experience there further?
Yeah, Geauga County was a ground up design. We were involved from the very beginning, engaging with the architect who is TDA, coming up with designs, onboarding their contractor, following through construction, keeping the owner up to date on changes and issues, and just trying to make it as smooth as a process as possible. At the very end, we were even involved with their move management, moving 14 departments into the one building. Now we're tracking changes, trying to get those addressed, and just, you know, things that you would encounter with a brand new building. Things go wrong, and, you know, we're there to provide support and make sure things get done in an expeditious manner.
And lastly, just to go over the difference, and we could open it to questions here. Our level of expertise, just to reinforce that we are local. We do have that deep bench strength. We have proven results delivering projects just like yours on time and on budget. You know, we want to be the low risk choice for you guys to make that will serve your purposes. And as I mentioned, the best value approach. We customize our, you know, a team here as needed to meet budget constraints if needed. We're truly objective. A lot of the main owners, clients that we have in this area have trusted us as a proven track record. We're very transparent, both with this team and as needed downstream to the constituents. Very collaborative, efficient, proactive. Our resources. You know, Derek lives within 15 minutes from this site. He would be your day-to-day project manager, highly responsive, proven track record, working with teams, complex teams to make sure attentive to and listening to all voices. Integrated estimating schedule departments in-house. We're ready to go with that constructability. That team's ready and in waiting to make sure, you know, we could work to get that set, you know, properly documented and right. In-house and nationwide coverage, as I mentioned, if we need to pull in some further perspective and insights from some of the trends we're seeing nationally versus some of the other clients that might be building and some new innovative concepts they're thinking of with the project. Communication and personal touch. As I mentioned, the importance of documentation. We speak, you know, to the importance of documentation. So on projects that we're on, that is a key, you know, fundamental for success. embracing efficient communication platforms. We'd love to find something that can kind of keep everybody efficient and up to date in a very, easy manner. And our strong relationships in this market. Like I said, we got active projects, some ending, some other projects right in the middle. We have deep project knowledge of this type of construction and very responsive to meet needs. So I know that puts us exactly at our 30-minute mark. So I wanted to transition here to just kind of hear just some general feedback or questions. I know there's a list of questions as well, just kind of where you wanted to steer us.
Yeah, in order to keep things sort of on an equal footing for everybody, we want to run through this set of questions that we ask everybody. Some of this has been answered already. So we'll treat it sort of on an exception basis. You're welcome to, expound further if you wish. But we're going to go through each one of these questions.
Okay, perfect. Yep.
Some you'll just say we stand at what we already said, and that's fine.
Yeah,
We'll-
okay.
Okay. So I guess the first one, eyeballs in here. I believe we probably,
Yeah, so
Answer
we
this.
spoke of that communication plan. I can jump back in our to show that if you want to go into deeper into that, but obviously the having communication and effective communication at the forefront would be a focus of ours.
everybody all right with that? So we'll move on to the
Or
next.
do you want to
Well,
jump
just
back?
just to add on
Yeah.
to that, one of my question was, is it going to be web-based? Is it live information on your documentation? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have a number of different tools that we can use. We like to use either Dropbox or SharePoint, where everybody has access to it. You can see all the documents, you can download the documents. We can even make those available to either as many people or as few people as we like. But that's what we like to do, to just kind of work on things in the background. The other thing that we also like to do is to use Microsoft OneNote. It's, that OneNote kind of, or is that Notepad kind of program. You can take all the OEC notes, you can take all your, just loose progress notes, things that really don't necessarily need to be formalized. You can then shift those over, create formal documents, and then you can pass those out as like formal meetings. And what's great about that is you can share that notebook with anybody. So, if you really need to know, you can dig through my notes and I'd be more than happy to answer it, or you can search for things on there. I mean, we just like to keep things really open and transparent. So.
And a lot of what's a best fit for this group is something we'd want to sit down and talk about. We could do kind of a pros cons of what this team needs and customize. There's owners that like an e-builder or a robust Procore that all of the stakeholders will be logging into that's web-based. Sometimes it's just the owner communication and documentation control. There's a lot of different ways that might best fit this group, but we'd want to customize it for what you guys feel the best value is.
Central location is always good.
Yeah.
That's
You get
definitely a number one.
distributed out amongst all kinds of emails. It doesn't, you lose things.
That's true.
Working relationships, getting to know you, knowing what you need, and making sure that we can communicate freely with you. That's really going to be the success to communicating with your team.
Yes. Okay. I know you guys never had a project that went badly, but can you tell me if you had a project that went poorly, and what did you do to help solve the problems and come to
I'll be glad.
agreeable outcomes?
Well, I'll be glad to talk about that. We were involved in a project down in Conotton, Ohio. It was a new community center, about a $25 million project. And it was kind of had problems from the very get-go. And a component of that was the contract structure. It was a multi-prime project, which I'm not a big fan of, but it was something that was in place before NV5 got involved in it. And one of the problems is it was very far behind schedule. And the other component was they had to take occupancy of part of the building, while the other component was already, it was going to be ongoing. And our solution was to come up with a mechanism to divide the building and isolate the new construction from what they needed to operate. Okay, and how did we do that? Then we had to escalate the work in the area that had to be finished. Well, we were able to look far enough ahead that we knew we had time to do this and implement this process. Now, once we implemented a process of having pull plan sessions, coming up with a matrix that created accountability on work that had to be finished, and what the steps were in place to get to that intra milestone date to open up a portion of this building. We created reporting metrics and reports that were updated every week. We reviewed them in detail at the project site. People were made accountable to hit their dates. And lo and behold, after about 3 months of this process, we were able to achieve what we needed to do. Now, the rest of the project, that's a different story, but that's the mechanism that we use to resolve problems. We looked at this as not something that can't be accomplished, but how are we going to get it done? And how are we going to, let's work through this as a team. Let's not create division, which there was a lot on that project. Let's come up with a way to bring people together to solve a problem.
So what I'm getting out of that is you guys took the leadership on
Absolutely.
developing that solutions to it. And I guess when I hear multiple primes, I think of the GC as being somewhat as the overall coordinator. Was he not supposed to be the coordinator for some of that?
By contract, they were, but
But they weren't.
in
doing it.
reality, they weren't.
Okay.
Okay, so we had to step into that role. Actually, the owner came to us and said, what can we do to help? What can you do to help us get across this bridge here?
Okay, great.
And I would just add with that, it's important to catch these early, whether it's a schedule issue, budget issue, quality issue, to catch it early. There's always going to be problems on every project. They need to be caught early. And like you said, take leadership from the owner's role,
Yeah.
have the information at hand and get things addressed timely.
Lane,
I'm ready.
you're up.
Yeah, you just talked a little bit about the next subject here, and that's resolving the differences between owner, architect, and contractor. I assume you're not going to don the boxing gloves or dueling at the 20 feet. So
Right.
it sounds like you did a pretty good job with the project that you were having trouble with. So
Definitely. Yep. Having a culture where people can, talk about issues and come to a fair
Yeah, I did-
conclusion and keep things moving is very important. Obviously, we're, with our owner hat on at that table, we would come prepared with all of the documentation needed to have kind of the best outcome in mind.
I know we haven't talked about on-site time and things yet, but just from the previous slides you showed us, looks like you have a weekly schedule as far as being on-site. We're not sure, we don't want a on-site guy every day. So I don't know how that would fit into all this yet, but we'll work up to that.
We know that this project's going to require a daily on-site presence.
Okay,
We're well aware of it now. Is it an 8-hour presence? I think a lot of it has to do with the stage of the project, where we're at in the work. Early on, absolutely, you're going to have somebody who is more focused on
Yeah.
in a larger capacity. But as you get into a routine, and if things are going smoothly, perhaps you scale back. But
I understand.
and as the project winds down,
Makes sense.
that's the type. It's all time related to where we are in the construction process.
Sure.
What makes this job unique is the phasing. And some of these phases are going to be relatively short periods of time. But what we have learned over the years and what we bring to the table with our experience in phase projects is that the work might be a short duration, but the transition from one phase to the next phase usually takes a lot longer than what people anticipate. And that's something that needs to be taken into account. I think that's one of the challenges of this project, to be honest.
Well, that's a great segue into my next question. What makes you nervous about this project?
What makes me nervous about it? The typical phasing durations, and it tends to take duration creep. They take longer than you anticipated. Moving a group out of an area and vacating it and having it ready for the next phase of renovation usually takes longer than what people anticipate. There's a lot of pre-planning that needs to go into place in order to make that go smoothly and make it happen timely. And we're experienced at that.
Yeah, to kind of add to some of that complexity is we would call it, when you open a new building, you would go through an activation, making sure all the systems are up and running, making sure that there's no holes in the walls are painted, floors down. We would effectively be going through a lot of mini activations. You're going to be getting up and you're going to be moving your staff into that new section of the building. Is that building going to be ready? Or I'm sorry, is that section going to be ready? Is the internet going to work? Is the wall going to, be there? Is it going to be heated and cooled? Is the life safety systems going to be active? That is a big challenge. And it takes a lot to get a space ready to go. And there will likely be complexities even after folks move in. People will note that, there are some issues. This still might need to get completed. So we're going to have to likely be working with contractors or trying to figure out a schedule when to get contractors in to resolve those issues, because we want to make sure that we hold that GC and any other contractor accountable for the work that they signed up for. But ultimately, we want to make sure that the folks that have to work in this building, they have to continue to love this building after everybody leaves. And we want to make sure that it is as good as we can get it.
And I would just,
Let me say one other thing, the coordinating the work with the Laketran's people in the operations that run the different departments within the building. I think that's very key to the success of this project, especially with phase construction and making them part of our team or the construction team. So they are very aware of what's going on. And that's going to be it's not something that scares me or is a challenge, but that's part of the solution to the question you're asking.
that's what I was going to add, the items voiced there. We have a proven track record for getting over those hurdles. Obviously everybody's hearing in the market procurement issues, issues with, the price of your project going all over the place from what you're hearing in the industry, and some uncertainty there, making sure our documents are ready, making sure, our bid event's successful, making sure that we address all of the issues we talked about in pre-construction. Those are kind of things that make owners nervous that we're here to address.
Yeah, the question I have here is what makes you excited about Laketran's project? And I think you kind of added that in with your concerns of what's going on with, so I think they've kind of got that one.
Okay. Donna?
What do you consider to be the three most significant challenges or risks to successful completion of this project? And how will you mitigate those challenges?
I'll start with one. One would be procurement. Obviously, when contractors come on board, there's a shop drawing process. We want to quickly make sure that that process is set up efficiently, get buy-in from Bowen, from the team, that those are coming in a timely fashion, that they're reviewed and approved so we can get things into order, aspects with electrical, mechanical. You've heard about all of the stories in the news about the longer than anticipated procurement timeframe. We would make sure we have a process in place to make sure we, mitigate that issue.
I'd like to tack on to that. So with respect to supply chain issues, sometimes you can avert them, sometimes you can't. For example, Geauga County, that building, we made the recommendation early on to buy the steel ahead of time. Which was a good recommendation. We were able to get the steel on time and pre-crazy inflation pricing. So we were able to save the owner a lot of money, which maybe they would have been on the hook for had they ordered the steel 6 months later. Sometimes we run into issues where, unfortunately, we are the subject of supply chain issues. Case in point, Geauga County was operating on temporary electrical panels because we couldn't get the permanent electrical panels because of supply chain issues to manufacture the type of material that it is to make the circuit breakers, the plastic. And so what we did was we tried to We try to prescribe different panels if that was possible, and unfortunately we couldn't for various reasons. So instead of getting the Eaton, right now we were waiting on the Eaton breakers. So instead we ordered Square D as temporary panels, got those installed, got the building fully operational. But one area where we were able to mitigate also with electrical is for Eaton, they had called out a certain switchgear, which wasn't made, which was actually made in Mexico. And unfortunately, there were issues with getting that on time. And when we were alerted early on that there would be a potential supply chain issue, we went back to the engineer of record and the architect and said, we got to figure this something out. We got to get power into the building, because without a switchgear, it doesn't matter if we have temp panels or permanent panels, we're not getting power in that building. So we had prescribed, so we worked together. We figured out a different kind of switchgear setup, which actually is manufactured in Cleveland at Eden over on Harvard. And we were able to get that in about 6 to 8 weeks, to where it didn't affect the overall operations of getting the building done, getting the walls painted, and getting the rest of the electrical equipment installed.
I would just, for two other points, just so I know we're trying to get through a lot of questions here that we already talked about in depth. One would be that phase scheduling, making sure we're all around, Brian spoke quite a bit about how his expertise will help with that, and to make sure that we flow, have a really good flow through the project. And then the other would be just the significance with pre-construction. We spent a lot of time talking about the significance of our team diving in there on how we would bring a lot of value to that process so that you guys get the best number on the street during a bidding event.
Mr. Button.
When you talked a few minutes ago about the phasing, what came to my mind is the fact that we're going to be significantly involved in the operations area, the dispatch area, customer service. And my antenna went up, quite frankly, when you indicated that sometimes there's even problems after the move-in. Our service is highly dependent on those two departments. Even a disruption of the internet is a nightmare. How do you think you can deal with this? I don't know if the other transit facilities you have done has involved operations to that degree. If yes, how did you work around those kinds of problems?
I could start with that, obviously coordination with those stakeholders involved, as sitting at the table with them to really understand the risks. We'd have to do a risk evaluation. Sometimes, we've done on some of these high risk is to have backups in place. Maybe that could be a temporary swing area that's done, if we need full redundancy, or it could be just aspects with, making sure that we do some testing of the equipment and spacing, to avoid any issues, when we do fully move a team. But you're right that those are from highly critical medical spaces to highly critical operation spaces that you have. There's the same type of approach would take, and that's to really sit down with everybody and really understand, hear from everyone's voice. A lot of times, we need everybody's perspective and at that table to get the full picture of what those risks are.
It all goes back to planning. Do your pre-planning, whether it's your pre-planning for the whole project or whether you're planning for a phase of renovation. The success all goes back to, putting the effort in up front to make sure that you can execute a plan and as efficiently as possible.
In your PowerPoint here, you referenced under resources, in-house industry experts nationwide. Who do you have that's transit related?
Well, from coast to coast, we have engineers that are in transit design, and we can provide kind of who those leads are, but from coast to coast, we have major offices in New York City and Raleigh, San Diego that specialize purely in transit, high-speed rail design. commuter types of different designs. So, we have those in-house capabilities to lean on if there is some aspects that you guys would like to, a second opinion on. We do that a lot with clients. Say an IT department says, for some of the owner items, this is what we think we need. Can you have one of your specialists take a look at this list? Is there something somebody else is using out there that might be a better option? In terms of transit design or operations, is there something like that we can bounce off some of those experts? That would be a great option for
I was
us.
thinking in specific, what we've been talking about here, in terms of the phasing.
Yep.
People who've been involved in this.
Yep.
With highly sensitive areas of the operation.
Yeah, and that's, we can involve them. It reminds me a little bit of some work I know Brian was involved with, on the utility side, with First Energy, with some of their departments that have zero ability to go down and some things like that. But, from a perspective of making sure we have that redundancy is key. I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, I mean, that's key, that we have we're pretty deep in the personnel we have. And we can, take advantage of that, like Mark indicated.
Well, fixed route delivery and our dial-a-ride paratransit delivery, that's quite different from commuter rail and some of the more
Right.
Sophisticated things that larger transit systems do.
Right.
But it still comes down to, working with people, coming up with a plan and executing it. And understanding how you operate here within this building.
Yeah, we would want to make sure all of the owner stakeholders are, understanding what those risks are, and we're making decisions together. And if we need various expertise to be integrated into that, we have some of that in-house. We may need to go outsource it. We're here as an extension.
Part of being successful on this project is we understand that there's going to be some Laketran specific kind of processes and procedures that will likely be different than maybe some other projects that we might have encountered. I mean, that's a given, but we're going to listen. We're going to talk to, the various stakeholders. We'll talk to the department leads. We'll talk to the dispatch to understand exactly what it means to be fully up and operational. I mean, does that mean we have to have completely reliable internet? Does that mean we have to have fiber and maybe we have to have a cellular signal as a backup in case maybe, a contractor hits a fiber line and we got to make sure that we stay up and running? That's a possibility. I mean, does it mean that we have to have a staging area at plus 25% just in case we have overflow? Yeah, we could probably address that. I mean, it's about, we are more than willing to learn what your Laketran specific process is. And of course, we have other individuals that are, in New Jersey or New York or whoever that have done these kinds of processes and projects before, and we can get their insight. But needless to say, we will provide a Laketran specific solution plan, put together the processes, follow up with those processes, follow up with those individual employees to make sure that we are not affecting them, that we're not just talking to the board and getting their say so. We're actually boots on the ground, talking to the individuals, figuring out, are we impacting you? Yes or no? If we are, what can we do to do better? So we guarantee that we will do that. And again, be an extension of Laketran staff. We value you guys. We would treat every individual as if they are the most important person on the job. And we will ensure that operations will stay fully operational, whatever that may entail. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yep.
You're up, Mike.
Moving right along here.
Yes, sir.
What value does your firm bring to Laketran in this project? Well, as we've been going along here, it's pretty obvious the talents that you guys have. I don't think there's any need to further expand on that. As we
Appreciate that.
continue talking, we can pick up on anything that somebody might be missing.
Okay.
So let's continue on. Ben?
My question was, we're going to remain in operation. How do you ensure to plan to keep us in operation? I think we've kind of beat that horse to death. I don't know if you have any more specific things you want to add, but we've spent a lot of time on that.
Yeah, I think we're we're well prepared as a focus to jump right into it, make sure that's addressed.
Okay, that leads to Donna again.
What actions would you take if the project is falling behind schedule or exceeding the project budget?
As mentioned with some of our reporting, we want to make sure we're seeing those trends early. When the earlier we can solve them, obviously the problems, before it gets too large, that it's a wave that brings everybody off. But so part of how we deal with those in terms of an action is to make sure we have visibility to those early. And when we find that a problem or see an issue, that we actually do the research to understand it fully, bring what the problem is to the table to this group in our owner session, bring some recommendations on how to address it, of what our actions are going to be. We'll have an action plan on how we're going to. It's one thing to know about a problem. It's another thing, well, what's the plan that we're going to follow to address that plan and to be very transparent with what that is.
To elaborate on what Mark's saying, it all goes back to, early detection of these things. We look at trends. We trend things. We're always looking ahead. What do we see now that's going to affect this project down the road? And we pride ourselves on, early detection of issues. Let's get the monkey on the table now and let's start talking about it now. But you always have, we're very issue focused. We come up with detailed recovery plans. We have weekly or daily, bi-weekly updating of how we're going to take an issue and get it resolved so it's not impacting the project completion date. But it's a collaborative team effort. It's not us saying this is how it has to be done. You have to bring all the brain trust into the group here to make it happen.
Part of trying to understand how to bring a project back into schedule and, perhaps within budget is having the day-to-day conversations with the contractor, with guys on the ground. You want to just kind of see if you can not only anticipate this, but realize when stuff maybe could actually happen, right? We want to have that conversation and be able to think creatively on how to bring the project back into focus. Do we understand that maybe the weather isn't conducive to pouring concrete, and because the weather isn't good, now you can't erect the steel because the concrete foundation is there. Well, what can we do? Well, maybe we can do some pre-staging work of the steel and maybe kind of get that set up to just kind of burn a day or two so that doesn't kind of burn into the critical path of concrete foundations. Sometimes we got to think creatively, and it takes a lot of on-site coordination, talking to the individuals, talking to Bowen, and even talking to maybe Laketran and the employees to figure out maybe what would work best. Because sometimes, it's not just the building construction that gets behind schedule. Maybe it's the moving, maybe it's some of these punch list items that have to take place. So it's just about coordination with all these individuals and pushing forward to getting the project back on track.
And I think the proof is our actual results. We've delivered during this very uncertain time, some very similarly sized projects on time and on budget. As Derek mentioned, that there's high volumes of issues of things that did not go as expected or unforeseen. Being a great problem solver, being able to come up with a workaround, keep that critical path moving. There's no shortage of need for great problem solving on projects, for both budget and schedule.
Some of the things that we as owners reps would do, just one last point, is we would just have the private conversation with the GC to try to figure out how do we get within schedule, and is this something that we really need to elevate to the concern of Laketran because this is really detrimental, because there's going to be things that are going to happen in the background that we're going to take care of, and we'll just kind of be like, okay, we potentially have an issue plus or minus a day or two, we took care of it, everything's fine. That's what the benefit of having on-site presence, having that rapport, and just trusting one another for those decisions.
I know we're approaching the hour. Do we have time to move?
We can keep going.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So next question is to explain what your process is going to be during the plan review stage. You know, we kick off basically by, you guys get 20 days, right? To sort of go through the plans and get things put together. So talk a little bit about that. How are you going to handle that?
So, we mentioned earlier on a kickoff meeting with the team, that would be very structured to make sure we got the right people in the room to get that kicked off. Back of house, our team would be doing detailed plan review. We already showed you, we already jumped into it a little bit. We have the expertise, in-house to go through there that we have on staff people that have had roles bidding projects just like this. They know kind of what to look for, risk exposures, if you will. That risk assessment will be right off the bat. Dan Sexton, who you saw, would be going through there. Where do we have risk exposures, looking at the budget that's been done to date, and reconciling that to what we think some things would be and where some budget issues may be. There's always allowances, some confusing details where, it may cause a bidder to price it higher because of uncertainty. We want that risk assessment to get in there and work closely with Bowen to get those items addressed, whether they're details or just a larger picture things, that Brian would be jumping in right away with going through those workflows, doing those risk assessments that we talked about with some of the transition between phases. Again, 20 days, we have to have kind of our team on standby, ready to go, and we would be for that process, and it'd be very collaborative.
Are you comfortable with the 20 days?
I'm sorry.
Are you comfortable with the 20 days?
We are. I mean, obviously, once we dig in and meet with everybody, if other stakeholders aren't comfortable with it, we would not slow that down. But if some other stakeholders, the design team, the owner team, getting into some detailed things with phasing, if it comes up that we need to spend a little bit more time to get it right, we would advocate for that. But if we find things are generally in order and we're just cleaning up, 20 days would be sufficient.
You can, if you do this correctly, you can focus on the big issues first. And then we know that there are going to be some items that might have to be looked at after the 20 days. That's okay too. But we want to focus on the big things that are going to affect the project, the cost, the procurement, the phasing of the work. And there are a lot of different ways to look at, constructability review. And, I feel as though we can take advantage of not only our experience, but also, we'll tap into other things, other options as well. For example, we can reach out to other suppliers and bounce off ideas off of them, maybe on supply chain issues. Obviously, that's going to be a big issue. I know that we were asked about that before the meeting started. I'm going to give you a good example. We were involved in a project for a school renovation. It started in April of this year, and it has to be, the heating system is being, and the cooling system is being replaced in the building. There's a substantial completion date in October of this year. We basically had 6 months to do this project. Well, the first thing we did is we looked at the design and said, the units that you're replacing to heat and chill this building are a totally different power system. It runs on 480 volts. You don't have 480 volts of power in this building. We looked at this first and said, there's no way First Energy is going to supply power to this building now to get heat in this building by October. So what was our solution? Well, let's revise, work with the design team to revise the design so we can run our units on the existing power in the building, get heat in here, change, and actually gave a credit back to the owner because the units were cheaper, okay? And then we'll work on getting the 480 volts in the building to do the cooling side of this once during the winter side. So during the winter time, but we worked, we saw that there was an issue here. We worked through the problem, we came up with the solution, and our units are being delivered now and installed, and we're going to have heat in this building in October, when in reality, the design team never even took that into consideration. So we came up with a creative solution that actually saved the owner some money.
Okay, great. Thank you. Chuck?
When, explain your process when a field problem arises and needs owner input to resolve. So you're gonna, out there uncovering something that doesn't look right, it's maybe not gonna work really with plans and specs. What's the process that you're gonna go through to get a resolution for that? Similar to probably what you
Sure.
just talked about, but
Sorry, does that actually happen?
yes.
Well, so if there is a problem out in the field, the first question, well, the first thing that I do is, we get with the contractor, we get with the architect, and we determine, is this an issue with the quality of work? Or is this an issue with the design documents? Sometimes architects put things on paper that don't make sense in real life. So sometimes that, we have to red mark those and say, you know what? The contractor, he's thinking and he's actually doing the right thing. So I think we need to do what the contractor wants to do. And then we just red mark the drawings and then we make them modifications later. Let's say maybe on the flip side, let's say the contractor wasn't following the plans and they implemented a change. Well, then we are in the position of approaching that general contractor and saying, your contractor didn't follow the specs. We'll verify this with Bowen and say, you have to push your guy to rip out that stuff and you have to do it right. And as your owner's rep, we stand firm shoulder to shoulder with Bowen to say, this is what has to be done. And we will push to make sure that gets done and gets done correctly.
If there's a person on site all the time, that makes it a lot easier to identify
It does,
those.
yeah.
If there's not a full-time person, then you think you're gonna catch them all, or is there things you're gonna get past you?
Well, this is where you have to have a good working relationship with the general contractor and whoever the project manager is for the general contractor, that they can reach out to you and say that they've found an issue and they need to bring it to you, the OR's attention. And how are we going to deal with this? That's the number one way to do that. Otherwise, you run the risk if you don't have that relationship of the general contractor just kind of whatever and just kind of pushing aside. And that's really where you get into those kinds of issues that we really want to avoid. And that's why we love to be on site, developing those relationships, being here, getting the inside knowledge of what's going on with your building. Where does something make sense? Where does something not make sense? Having Bowen involved, I would hope that they would be on site on a near daily basis as well. And we would be the go-to team. However, we would get Bowen involved to make sure that we prevent those issues from happening. And if they do happen, we would address those. Like, I'll give you an example. So on Geauga County, the building is built of a steel structure, just steel and drywall and steel studs. And in the plans, they had called out for the I-beams to be exposed. And we looked at that, the architect, and the GC, and we thought, well, this isn't going to work. This isn't a good idea because then you got exposed concrete. It doesn't look good. They weren't even going to be painted. So the question was, well, do we paint the I-beams? Is that going to look good for an office building? Or maybe we should wrap them with drywall. And we came up with the solution of, well, let's just wrap them with drywall. And we made that decision on the fly, and it worked within the best interest of what the owner wanted. He wanted a conservative building that was easy and not like this open kind of industrial look. And so we addressed the issue without really raising a whole lot of attention, and things just went smooth from there. I'm sure there's other things that popped up that, I could go on about, but that's just an example.
Part of this question, I think, is, if this issue arises and it needs owner input, how do we bring that to you? We usually vet things out when an issue happens, or we find something in the field, or there's an issue on the project that needs owner input. We vet the process out. We come up with numerous options before we even bring them to the table for the owner. We want to give you options on the solution to what we're finding.
Great. Lane,
Excuse me, gee. We've talked about on-site person or full-time versus weekly or whatever, and that's obviously will be resolved depending on what phase the project is in. So the rest of the question is what tasks and responsibilities will that person have? Well, we kind of talked about that too, so I don't know if we want to continue beating on that or not. Let's just move on.
Sounds good. Yeah, we would kind of best fit, our staffing to meet the needs of the project and pass along savings where there's an opportunity and do all the things we just spoke of. That'd be great.
If the contractor is not following the plans or specification, how will your field representative react? Eric, I'm assuming that's you.
Yes, ma'am. Well, kind of diving into the answer I gave just a few moments ago is if that contractor is not following the design specs, is there a reason why they're not following it? Is it because maybe the architect really did cause an issue? Maybe they constructed something that really wasn't very easily constructible? Was it because maybe the contractor was giving us the opportunity to say, if I construct it this way, there's a cost savings here. This is standard practice, this is what we normally do. And if you're okay with this, we can proceed on. But let's say that the contractor did something and we have to pump the brakes and say, whoa, stop here, stop what you're doing. Well, the first thing that we're going to do is, again, go back to Bowen and just have them verify that, are we indeed in violation of our own drawings or our own spec? If the answer is yes, then we approach the general contractor and say, your contractor is now within spec of here. We need you to either stop work and do the work that is designed, or we need you to stop work and pull things out. And also, by the way, you have to make sure that you staff up to keep schedule. And we will ensure that gets done, whether it's through our own personal relationship with that GC, whether it's through meetings, or maybe even if we have to up the ante and we actually have to withhold payment in order for that GC to comply. So there's a number of different tools that we have in our tool bag in order to get contractors and GCs to comply and to do things well. But we often like to lean back on the more friendly approach of, hey, this is a simple mistake, let's readdress this, or maybe this really is something that needs to be red marked in the drawings and we want to reflect that on.
This question is worded, how would you react? In my mind, maybe it should back up a little bit in how do you identify these things are going on? So you know how to react.
Yeah, I could add to that, in terms of the reaction, we want everything to be predictable of what we see in the field. We're always talking about in our weekly meetings, what's ahead for the next week, with the team, who's going to be there, are there some new people coming on site next week? Well, then maybe we need to do some first work, kind of see how they're doing and pay closer attention. Or are they just finishing something they've already done 50% of, and they're already kind of in a good, pace of work. We have to know as the PM what the high risk areas are. Like I said, first work with any complicated details. That's how we have kind of a dialogue and active communication with the field that has us avoid those, like you said. So there isn't some kind of surprise reaction. This is something that we're predictable. We're all on a talking relationship with everybody. We would hope somebody, if somebody had a better idea or a different idea, that comes to the table in the weekly sessions. We're in the field. They're going to know us. There's going to be some active dialogue there, that there isn't any kind of surprise reaction or anger or, infighting, we want to avoid all of that and keep a good positive culture.
One of the items in it's obviously is item number 13 on your list. That if they're not following the plans and spec, perhaps the contractor doesn't have the right personnel on site. That's something we can raise a flag on immediately. You really know it pretty quickly. Maybe their superintendents they're not qualified to be doing the work for this project. So maybe they have to change personnel. There's a lot of factors that go into if the work is not being done properly. Or they're trying to cut corners, we're trying to ensure that that doesn't happen. And this goes back to making sure that, there's a lot of communications between all the people. We're in the field, we're talking to the project superintendents, the project managers, their field foremen, making sure that try to avoid these items to make sure that you're getting what you're getting paid for.
So just kind of tacking off what Brian said is that in our weekly meetings, we will know ahead of time what's going to be taking place, or for that day, what contractor is doing what. So, we will also have the set of drawings that we can actually validate things and spot check and see if things are going well. We're all well versed in reading drawings and understanding general practices and best practices of contractors. So we would be able to at least note that up front. And then, of course, raise our hand, bring attention to either the GC, Laketran, or Bowen, and we would make sure that we get that addressed.
Thank you.
Well, number 14 talks about how many hours per week, you're gonna be on site, but I think we've already beaten that one to death. So I think we can move on. Chuck?
How will you be a strong advocate for Laketran? What's your
start with that.
communication plan to the public?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as an extension of Laketran, just like we've been an extension of many clients that are publicly facing, the people that everyone in this room serves are people we serve by extension, and having the communication channels with what you guys approve or need to communicate, we can help with that communication. Obviously, we're an advocate for bringing this project of construction is very high risk. Our job is to make sure that risk is controlled and that things happen in a very predictable fashion. And that's really kind of what we can offer in that advocacy forward to make sure that we address that risk for all the constituents.
We're here to protect you. You would be hiring us. We're here to look out for you and always protect, the owner. You're paying us to do that, but we're also fair and honest. One thing I want to say is that changes are going to happen on this project. I mean, I don't mean to be negative, but that's the nature of the beast, especially when you're doing expansions and renovations. It happens. But we're going to be fair, but we're going to be firm, and especially with cost and schedule related issues.
So just to tack on how I would be an advocate for Laketran is I personally see Laketran as an asset of the Lake County community that, folks rely on to either to get to work, to see loved ones, to function. It's some of the lifeblood within the county. And me personally, I like to do a lot of charitable kind of events. Like this past weekend, I did a bike ride for the Bike Cleveland Association. The fun do is a 6-mile ride around Cleveland, but all that was to raise money for awareness so that bikers could, you can create bike lanes on the street. I've done other biking events in the past to raise money for multiple sclerosis or for diabetes research. So I have a personal connection with wanting to make sure that I look out for the best interests of Lake County, looking out for individuals and making sure that we not only keep Laketran functioning at 100% for its residents, but also for anybody else that wants to use the service.
Lane?
Well, almost the last question here is about safety. And Laketran has an excellent safety record, both in the facility here and on the streets of Lake County. And one of the things that we pride ourselves in is that record, because we have the employees are dedicated to making sure that they continue with that excellent record. And so what would you do if workers were not using the necessary safety equipment? And how would you ensure the safety of the public and Laketran employees around construction zones? It's an open question. It's not really a,
Yeah, I could start. I mean, obviously, for all of our projects, there's a zero tolerance for any infractions with safety related, whether that's the gear or whether that's obviously signage and fencing, and especially with an addition, there's just no greater concern as well. We would echo that as a concern with employees that are working amongst construction where the contractors park. You know, there's got to be a robust safety plan on where people are parking, where materials are staged. There's a lot that goes into safety other than just making sure everybody's got their hard hat, vest, and glasses on. And that's where
Right.
Safety starts first with that plan. You know, we would make sure the contractor has an orientation so that everybody coming onto this project knows there's a culture where what you just said is paramount to everybody that sets foot on this site and understands that zero tolerance.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I take, like Mark said, we take safety very seriously. Me personally, I've been on quite a few sites in my time with where safety is paramount. I've been on open pit mining sites. I've been on naval shipyards. I've been on regular container shipyards and power plants, where if you don't have your PPE, your hard hat, your steel toes, your vest, your glasses, you're off. If you speed around the premises, you're off. If you don't have identification on you, you're off. So I understand what it means to have safety, not only for, you want to prevent cuts, injuries, but also safety has to do with security. This is a highly secured facility in terms of you have a anti-terrorism gate that has to be maintained during all of construction. Individuals on site need to make sure that they have adequate identification. Safety starts as soon as you enter the door. And that's one thing that we will ensure is that as the owner's rep, that we hold the GC accountable as well as other contractors and other individuals accountable, that we want to make sure at the end of the day that there's zero accidents, that we can go home to our families safely. And that even at the end of this, that we can say that we've done a good job. We built a really great headquarters that was renovated and we had zero incidents.
Thank you.
Why is your firm the best for the job?
Let me start, seeing this is our last question, by thanking everybody for their time here today. We feel, and I hope it's reflective that we're passionate about doing a great job for our clients. And we've got that proven track record here within a 10-mile radius, all kinds of projects where we've done exactly that. Like I mentioned, what project success usually comes down to are the people involved. I hope you see the capabilities and experience level of who's at this table here today. This is who you're going to get. There's not going to be a bait and switch. There's not that somebody's over consumed somewhere else. We're going to be your number one client. Communication obviously is a big focus of this team. We're great at that. Other clients have trusted us to get that right. Whether it's the reporting, whether it's effective communication, being a call away to make sure there's full transparency to a team. So those are some of the high level items on why we're a great fit for exactly what's needed. Ultimately, it comes down to who's going to be able to control the risk on your project, bring a predictable result. And that's where we feel we're the best fit.
Yeah, but one thing you'll learn if you talk to our clients, people like to work with us. We're fair, but we're firm in what we do. We're proactive. We're not reactive. We enjoy what we do, and that's important. We bring passion, like Mark said, to the team and to the project. We can provide a nice full gambit of services, not only within our office but outside of our office and within our firm. But we're always looking out for the best interests of our client. So that's why we're definitely the best firm for your job.
So I think what Mark and Brian have said as basically that's the gist of it. But If I were to add something is we want to take the day-to-day tasks away from you guys so that you can trust us to keep your project on track, on budget, and you wouldn't need to worry. I know that when we went through our pre-construction, I asked you exactly what it is that Noir could do for you. And you said it was, you want us to manage those day-to-day tasks. You want us to provide ironclad communication not only to the workers, Bowen, but the employees and maybe even parts of the public for this project. And I think that's what we can do well. And also we have the tenacity to figure out what are the Laketran specific processes that it takes to mean getting operations unabated full during the entire time. I know that was a very good question, and you certainly asked me a lot on that. And we want to make sure that we study what it is that it means for Laketran to be fully operational and make sure that we guarantee that you guys can be fully operational and serve the public, serve Lake County. And we'd be more than happy to be your rep firm.
So just to close, we're very excited for this potential opportunity. We feel we'd be a very good fit. So I don't know if there's any other final questions or go ahead.
Do you have anything? If not, we thank you very much for your time.
One
Oh, I'm
more.
sorry.
What does NV stand for?
MB.
NV.
Your name, what does NV stand for?
The original firm was Nolte. So that's the N. So that was the original firm going back quite a ways. And then V5, there's 5 main verticals of the company. Program management, which we serve is one of those 5.
Thank you.
My friends ask me if I'm in a boy band. If you want the truth. But don't tell me.
Well, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask my question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay. Beginning with your PowerPoint, you touched on community engagement. And we've touched on that throughout these questions. I wondered if you could be just a little more specific about it. I don't mean like a literary dissertation, but by community engagement, do you mean within the Laketran family, if you will? Or do you mean the broader community? If it's the broader community, do you have a communications person on board? And could you give me an idea of, if it's the broader community, how you go about engaging the community, stakeholders, and so on?
I could start with that. You know, many of our clients do have a desire to have some active community engagement. You know, that's ranged through the years to many different things, to a newsletter that we can help develop for publish of, you know, what's happening with the project with photos and some updates, keeping them, you know, maybe at quarterly points aware of what the project is. Some of that's been community events where we would help you plan a gathering open to the public to allow some people to speak about the project, whether it's at certain milestones like a beam raising or you know, the final raising of a steel beam, or the some other points, or a open house at the end of the project. You know, we've helped kind of plan these sessions, make sure that there's active transparency with the community. We've also helped, you know, worked with project teams to, you know, if we establish that culture we spoke of, is there some community outreach we can do? You know, it's tied with this project, some things that we can do with fundraising or participation with some things like Derek spoke of some outreach. So there's a lot of different ways we could take that, and we were very experienced with that. If that's something that would be, you know, in terms of the legacy of this project, we speak a lot about that with our owners. What do we want to see as a legacy of this project? And sometimes that community engagement is a very important piece of that.
Thank you.
Okay, now,
Okay,
in the absence of anybody else, thank you. Appreciate it.
thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Power down.
You don't, you can just keep going. You don't have to wait for him to leave if you don't want to.
Okay.
Unless there's anything you guys.
Sorry, Gary, I didn't mean for like. It's just thinking, hey.
Anything else?
You know, I gotta get a refill maybe.
Anybody need a cup of coffee?
Okay, we have the last couple of bullet
Eric, nice
points here
meeting
that we need to go
Likewise.
through as a committee. So thanks. Appreciate it
All
very
right, well,
much.
thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
So much.
Yeah, you too.
If any questions come up, our numbers and contact information. is on there, so. Have a great night.
Thanks, Stu.
Okay, is there any old business we need to discuss? Seeing none, new business? Next meeting is tomorrow at 10, correct?
Yep.
Correct, okay. Okay. Is that officially part of the new business? Is that the way that works, Chuck?
Just want to make sure we get it into the minutes.
Gotcha. Okay, well, it's in the minutes. Okay, so I guess we can adjourn. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, we're adjourned.